and welcome to this Spring Knowledge Transfer event. Thank you so much for joining us today, where we'll be finding out more about a groundbreaking industry-wide initiative to accelerate the scale-up of next-generation low-carbon concretes. We're joined by Scottish Water and the team behind the Advanced Market Commitment to learn about their journey so far. To get us started, here's just a short video introducing Spring Innovation and what our role is in supporting innovation and collaboration across the water sector.
In our industry, innovation is happening everywhere, every day. With so much going on, it's hard to keep track. The sector is tackling big, urgent challenges, like climate change, aging infrastructure, and more, but not always in a joined-up way. That's where we come in. Spring is the central innovation hub for the water sector. We gather insights from hundreds of projects across the UK and Ireland, showing who's doing what, what's working, and where the next big transformation could come from. We connect problem owners with solution providers globally, both inside and outside the water industry, to share knowledge, find partners, and accelerate ideas. This means less duplication and more efficient use of time and resources. Whether you're looking to learn from others' experiences, find collaborators, or share your own solutions, Spring makes it easy. Together, we're speeding up innovation, driving transformation, and shaping the future of our industry, both in the UK and Ireland. Spring, accelerating water sector transformation.
Great, so hopefully that was helpful to those who aren't familiar with Spring already. So just to summarise, Spring is here to help you deliver against Ofwat's expectations for best practice knowledge sharing across the water sector. We support delivery of the Water Innovation Strategy 2050 objectives through our knowledge sharing service, which supports the transfer of learnings from an innovation project to the wider sector, hoping to create that project legacy that will help innovators identify and adopt the right solutions at a greater pace and with less risk. So we actually partnered with Ofwat, the economic regulator for England and Wales, to build a view of what best practice knowledge sharing looks like. And the 6 principles we created were to learn from what already exists before committing to innovation projects, to target innovation insights to the right audience to meet our objectives. The insights are regularly shared through multiple channels from day one of the project. That sector knowledge is open and centralised. And the insights from both innovation successes and failures are shared. And finally, that people are empowered to receive and actually embed those lessons from those external sources. So back to today, I'll just share a little bit about the agenda for the session and introduce our speakers before I hand over to the team. Before I do, I just wanted to remind the audience we'll be launching a poll during this event. We'll be running a poll throughout to gather your thoughts about low carbon innovative concrete today, and we'll also be sharing a poll at the very end of the session to gather your general feedback on today's session, how useful you found it, and how likely you are to use the learnings outside of this session today. That poll is actually the most impactful way you can help us make sure these events are providing value to you, your organisation and the wider sector, and that these showcases are supporting faster paced adoption of solutions. So please do make sure you answer that when you see that come through before you drop off the call today. I'm just going to quickly introduce our speakers before I hand over. So we have Martin Folds, Principal Civil Engineer at Scottish Water, and Katira Herkus, Principal Procurement Specialist Transformation at Scottish Water. We're joined by Natalie Fredericks, COO of AMC and the AMC Programme Lead from Carbon Limited Technologies. John Ward, Associate AMC Design Lead from Carbon Limited Technologies, and Amanda Campbell, Associate from AMC Marketing and Communications Lead, also from Carbon Limited Technologies. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Martin to kick us off today.
Hi there, how are we all doing? So Scottish Water have been invited along today to have a view on what we have been, our journey with regards to low carbon concrete, and particularly with respect to the Advanced Market Commitment that we've recently signed up to. And to take us into a bit of detail of that, I'm going to hand over to Katira, who is going to take us through our journey and also where we are now, and then I'll come back and share a little bit of what we're doing to implement the actions that will come out of it. Are you okay there, Katira?
Great, thanks, Martin. Okay, I'll just take control of slides. Okay, good morning, everyone. So I'll kick off first with explaining why we joined the Advanced Market Commitment and why we've seen it as a fundamental thing to help Scottish Water with our net zero journey. So at Scottish Water, we're responsible for providing clean, fresh drinking water to the whole of Scotland and for safely treating wastewater before it returns to the environment every day. We're trusted to care for the water on which Scotland depends, and we're extremely proud of the service that we deliver. Every day, we deliver 1.5 billion litres of clear, fresh drinking water. We collect and treat over 1 billion litres of wastewater. We recover resources from that wastewater and we return it safely to the environment. And our focus is always on delivering an excellent service, providing great value for money, reducing our impact on the environment and going beyond net zero emissions. And these three priorities form Scottish Water's strategic ambitions. Now, Scottish Water has set a really ambitious target of achieving net zero emissions by 2040. That's 5 years ahead of the Scottish Government's target and 10 years ahead of the UK Government target. To meet this challenge, we must minimise both our operational carbon emissions and our capital carbon emissions. And alongside this, we're increasing the amount of carbon we can sequester through peatland restoration and woodland creation. And one of the biggest differences between Scottish Water and many of the other UK water companies is the scale of our commitment to reducing capital carbon, so the emissions associated with the materials and plant used in our £1 billion per year investment programme. In 2020, we did some analysis that showed that the main contributors to our capital carbon footprints were steel, concrete, plastics and fuels. And concrete alone accounts for around 20% of our capital carbon emissions. That's second only to steel at around 50%. This pattern is likely to be consistent across the wider water industry. And our teams therefore have been working closely with partners across the industry and beyond to find new ways of working, to explore innovative products and bring about meaningful change. So in summary, we have a very challenging net zero target and decarbonising both our operational and capital footprints is absolutely essential to achieving it. And this brings us on nicely to why we joined the AMC. So Scottish Water has already been working to adopt low carbon concrete, understand its technical viability and encourage its uptake across our supply chain. And the challenges we faced were threefold. So technical barriers to adopting low carbon solutions, behavioural and cultural shift required, both within Scottish Water and across our supply chain, and the availability of low carbon concrete in Scotland, especially within our more remote areas. Within our control, we introduced a mandate effectively banning the use of CEM1 concrete across our operations. Its use is now considered as a defect within contracts and our suppliers must raise a waiver if they wish to use it. This has already had a significant impact. We also developed a low carbon concrete technical protocol, which sets out blended concretes that can be used for various applications across our asset base. However, most of the current blends we have depend on GGBS, so ground granulated blast furnace slag, which replaces cement and traditional concrete. And as the steel industry decarbonises and moves towards electric arc furnaces, GGBS is becoming limited in its supply. And as an industry, we therefore need new low carbon concrete solutions that don't rely on GGBS. And that's why we began exploring what we're referring to as next generation low carbon concretes, which is exactly the type of products that the Advanced Market Commitment aims to accelerate. A few years ago, we recognised that Scottish Water alone is not large enough of a client to influence the concrete industry at the speed required, and that meaningful change would be required to have a collaboration across the wider ecosystem of client organisations and designers. We were then made aware of a project by Innovate UK exploring advanced market commitments for low carbon concretes, which was effectively a promise to collectively purchase future products that meet agreed carbon, technical, and commercial criteria. So the premise was compelling. If enough clients signed up, suppliers would have the confidence to invest, innovate, and scale production. The lack of a strong, unified demand signal was holding back progress, and the AMC offered a practical way to change that.
So thanks, Katira. Just if we can maybe just go back one slide. Sorry, I appreciate somebody's commented there that the slides hadn't changed. We were just talking around that one slide. That pie chart there, as Katira highlighted, was done on our capital projects for 2020. So that was our carbon emissions through our capital projects. Obviously 18% concrete, structural steel 21%. That actually breaks down into rebar being round about 10% of that breakdown. So that shows you the significant amount of carbon that's associated with concrete and its rebar. So that was really what our focus was back in 2020, 2021 with regards to reducing our carbon footprint. What we did with that was that we tried to bring in new different alternatives. We trialled lots of different products, 2 or 3 different products back during 21, 22, 23 period. But unfortunately, some of these things didn't become commercially viable, and some of them didn't actually physically work as well as what we wanted them to do. They were done in low risk areas, footpaths, slabs, that type of thing. But we found that we were struggling to actually get a bit of traction when it came to low carbon alternatives to OPC. And that's why when the AMC came along, it was something which we were very keen to embrace, as Katira highlighted there. It really is an opportunity for us to see what is already out there. The AMC have already scored a number of products and measured them with regard to their technical readiness. And therefore we can now approach those companies and talk about how they can bring that into our supply chain. We can now then look to carry out testing and trialling for ourselves before we then go ahead to use it in doing that. For us, that's very important because it gives us the assurance that the technical aspects of the company, the commercial aspects of the companies have already been reviewed and understood. And what we are then looking to take forward is the technical aspects of it. And that's something which is very, very important. And probably the biggest hindrance to us is technically trialing it as well as commercially making it available. I'm really, really excited by the AMC project because it gives us something on which to hang our coat on ultimately. It's given us the impetus to actually move forward with this. We've had recent meetings within Scottish Water's different stakeholder groups highlighting the need for better communication between our supply chain, between our delivery partners and with our designers as well. We've highlighted the better information that's needed from our supply chain with regards to what they're currently providing us and also what they could potentially provide. So the AMC Advanced Market Commitment has really given us a focus on how we can take this to the next stage within our capital programme. And it's definitely something which is giving me a bit of impetus and a bit of excitement about what we're going to do going forward. So Katira, I think that pretty much covers our story, doesn't it, to date?
Yes, thanks, Martin. I'll hand over to the AMC team now.
Thank you very much, Katira. So Carbon Limiting Technologies has been working with Innovate UK and DESNZ to design and launch this AMC programme. The initiative that we're going to describe today is very different from others in the construction sector, though as you'll see, it does work well alongside existing efforts that are taking place. Over the next hour or so, we'll explain how the AMC can accelerate the scale up and availability of next generation low carbon concretes through commitments to buy ahead of time. And we'll also hear more about Scottish Water's journey, as well as from one of our other AMC signatories. So let's start with concrete emissions. Many of you already know this, but for those of you that don't, it's important to frame the concrete challenge that we're about to talk about. So I'll just go back to basics for a moment. Concrete is made up of 4 primary ingredients: the binder or the cement that holds everything together. Secondly, the aggregates that fill and add the strength. There's usually some water mixed in, and then chemical admixtures, and these enhance the concrete's properties. We know that about 8% of global emissions come from cement and concrete production. And for Portland cement, which is the most common form of cement, about half of the emissions come from the fuel to heat the kiln, and the other half are chemical. So limestone, which is the main component of cement, breaks down into clinker, which is an intermediary product, and that process produces carbon dioxide as a byproduct. And this makes the decarbonisation challenge more than just about decarbonising the heating. The whole process of making Portland cement produces carbon dioxide. So here we continue to set the scene as to why Innovate UK has asked us to look at this market mechanism for concrete. And this graph is taken from a report that was done by the Climate Group and the Low Carbon Concrete Group, and it shows the growing projected carbon gap in concrete over time. It shows that the carbon intensity trajectory in the UK at the moment, which is the top line, is not declining at the rate needed to meet the UK government targets, which is the bottom line. So you see the gap increasing. More efficient use of concrete is recognised as going to be an important part of the solution, but it's not sufficient to close the gap. Carbon capture and storage as well is also being explored, and it's expected to also be part of the solution, but that won't be sufficient either. So we need to think about how we might bring these new low carbon concretes to market with much lower carbon intensities and much faster than we're doing at the moment. So the water sector, and I'm sure that with this slide, I'm not introducing anything that isn't already known by all of you, but I just wanted to highlight the scale of the expenditure through AMP8 and the significance related to increased requirements around environmental impact and how much of the expenditure will be on concrete intensive projects. Some specific environmental requirements will be relevant to those projects, and those include things like measuring whole life cycle carbon impact of a project, which can help identify opportunities to use low carbon materials or methods, reducing the overall footprint. There are requirements to address whole supply chain emissions, of which concrete will be a really important part. And embedding carbon reduction into contracts will also be a requirement, for example, into framework agreements with tier 1 suppliers. So all of that means that innovative low carbon concrete materials must be part of this solution. So back to concrete. We know that there's a thriving landscape of innovations, and Martin referred to some of them. Some of them are quite close to being market ready, and many have the potential to be massively disruptive. However, concrete, just as a sector and as an industry, has some really challenging structural characteristics that make it difficult to break into with a new material. Portland cement, the most common form of cement, is a commodity, and it's very cheap. And a way to think about this is that per tonne of carbon dioxide emitted, the cost of abatement will add to the relative cost of what's a really cheap product or a cheap concrete and make it more expensive. And that's a real problem in a commodity market. Secondly, limestone, which is the main ingredient, is a globally abundant material, and given the required volumes, is really hard to displace. Regulations as well are often ingredients based, which locks in the use of the incumbent, so Portland cement. There's a very high capex required for cement plants, again creating a big barrier to entry. And finally, there's a small number of very large global cement producers. And all of these things together make it really difficult for innovators to break into the market and move beyond these small scale pilot projects. So I just wanted to pause for a moment, just to find out from everyone, and I think there is a poll that's going to pop up on the screen with a question. So I think Leah's going to put a poll up to ask you how much your organisation is really thinking at the moment about the carbon emissions from concrete use. So if everyone can just answer that question, I think we are going to get to the results. I think the results will pop up on the screen as well. I think I have to answer the question as well for the answers to come up.
Yes, I think you might do, Natalie. Can you see that now?
So I'm part of the results, even though I shouldn't be. Okay, so we're seeing that there's quite a spread of answers here, but it is top of mind for quite a few of you, and very important for probably, yes, a third of you, so about more than half are paying quite a bit of attention to cement and concrete. So it's got clearly an issue for quite a few members of the group that are here. So this brings us to the core of the problem that we're tackling. The problem we face is this infinity loop. On the one hand, we have buyers and specifiers that are nervous to commit because the concretes are unproven. It's been very hard for them to break in and achieve any sort of scale. They're not available at scale. And when they are available, it's at sub-commercial scale, and they might be more expensive. And at the same time, if buyers and specifiers aren't able to make those purchasing decisions, innovators find it really hard to secure the large investments that they need to deliver that scale, to prove the performance of their concrete and allay the concerns of the buyers. So we're stuck in this loop of endless smaller scale pilot projects with buyers and specifiers saying they can't use the new materials and they're not available, which means that innovators can't invest, and around the loop we go. And I just want to introduce another challenge that's we found in the construction sector, and that's the complexity of the specification and the procurement process. So all of the different stakeholders need to align for new solutions to be implemented. Asset owners or developers, specifiers, contractors, and innovators all align or need to align. And not only are there different contractual arrangements across the different parties for the decisions for the procurement of concrete, but we also see a little bit of this kind of finger pointing at others in the value chain. So for example, contractors and specifiers will say that asset owners need to be willing to accept the new concretes on their assets and possibly pay a modest price uplift in the short term for them to be implemented. But asset owners want their specifiers to understand the concretes and specify them and to make the recommendations and provide the confidence that they can do this, and so on. So everyone needs to work together and align around the innovation needs and also around the areas where the new concretes might be used. So I think we're going to get another question that comes up. Just want to understand whether your organisations are currently engaging with low carbon concrete innovation. So we're just trying to understand if it's something that's really featuring in your plan. So we asked earlier, are you thinking about concrete? Now I want to ask, are you actually actively thinking about concrete innovation? And I don't think there's a submit button on this.
Oh, I'm not sure what's happened there. Bear with me.
I can see a submit button.
Okay.
Oh,
All right, so I'll get rid of mine. It may be that someone else needs to describe the results, though. John, are you able to see the results?
I can, Natalie. You've got 38% on yes, we proactively seek out new innovations, 34% on yes, we attend events and knowledge sharing activities, 10% on opportunistically, and 14% on not really.
So quite a spread, I think. Yeah. Quite a lot of you are already looking into it and I assume are looking for new solutions. And I guess we'll hear a little bit later about whether you're sort of finding some of the challenges that we're describing. But interesting that there are still quite a number in the room that aren't yet sort of actively engaging with innovative concretes. So that was the context to the project and particularly to the challenge that we're seeing. So there are plenty of innovations that could make a significant contribution to decarbonising concretes, but these aren't emerging at the speed and scale that's needed to meet the net zero challenge. For all of the reasons described, the structural challenges in the cement and concrete sector, this infinity loop that prevents buyers from committing, and the complexity of the specification and procurement process in construction. And it's also not clear which innovation areas or which innovations will offer the best long-term options in terms of scalability and carbon reduction. So this was the background and the context to Innovate UK's Advanced Market Commitment, or AMC. And what they wanted to do was to test whether a strong demand signal via this Advanced Market Commitment could unlock the scale-up investment that's needed. And this is significant investments that are needed to scale up plants. So we're thinking about probably tens of millions of pounds to scale up a cement production plant. So I'm now going to hand over to John, or just in a moment, who'll talk about the solution and describe the Advanced Market Commitment. But just before that, on the right-hand side, we see the objectives that Innovate UK is looking for from the programme over on the right-hand side of this slide. And what Innovate UK was hoping to see was 10 signatories by March 2026, and 500,000 cubic metres of volume commitment to next generation concretes over 5 years. They also wanted to see evidence that those AMC commitments unlocked investment into plant to scale innovations faster, and also evidence of some earlier stage VC investment in some of those innovations that weren't quite yet ready to scale. So I'm now going to hand over to John, who's going to give you an overview of the AMC and how it works.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Natalie. And good morning, everybody. And I think perhaps even good afternoon and good evening to a few people. So what I'd like to do now is just spend a little bit of time talking about how the AMC works, what its key design features are, and how people engage with it. But before we do that, I'm afraid it's a time for another poll question, and this is a slightly risky one. We'd like to understand a little bit about the challenges that you are currently experiencing in adopting innovative new low carbon concrete. In the hope that the challenges you identify are the ones which we will then be able to state and show you how the AMC intends to respond to it. But if you could just spend a few seconds jotting down some thoughts on what you see as your organisation sees as some of the key challenges that you're facing. So we've got 16 at the moment, perhaps. See if we can get to. Oh, I was going to say, see if we can get to 20, and then we'll move on. Maybe we can see if we can get to 25. Okay, we'll maybe stuck at 23. Oh, there we go. Leah, if I press more, does it then come up on the screen? The kind of a word cloud.
Yes, it should do. Can you not see that at the moment?
There we go.
There you go.
Very good. So I think coming through loud and clear are issues around cost, and we will talk about that quite a lot in the future, and concerns about costs, but also a real challenge and set of issues around availability, commercial availability, supply, volumes. So a kind of a combination of what price the product's going to be available for, and whether or not it's going to be available at reliable supply. And then a few other bits and pieces in there as well around designers and performance uncertainty. I hope that we will be able to convince you that the AMC looks to respond to many of those challenges in the way that it works, and hopefully you'll be convinced and can see why we feel this is an exciting solution for driving forward innovation. So let me then talk a little bit more about the AMC in the context of those barriers. The key thing about the AMC and the key to unlocking an understanding of how it works is that it asks people who are signing up to the AMC to imagine a future where all of those problems that you've just talked about, especially those problems about supply unavailability, are addressed. And it's a future in which you say there is an abundant supply of innovative low carbon concrete available. And it asks the signatories to say, well, if that scenario did come to pass, if that future did come to pass, then how much innovative low carbon concrete would you be willing to buy? And by stating that and explicitly saying this is what we would do if this future came to pass, it becomes that much more likely that that future does indeed come to pass, because people now have a better understanding of what the potential demand, the latent demand for low carbon concrete actually is. So it's all about asking people to stare through the telescope that we have on the slide here and look into the future to say, this is what we would do if that future came to pass. And when I talk to my teenage children about this, they say, oh, Dad, you'll just kind of manifest the concrete in that slightly surly tone. But what they mean is that by stating that this thing is going to happen, it becomes that much more likely that it does indeed happen. And one thing I'd actually add to this diagram, which isn't quite captured fully on this diagram, is that we have one person looking through one telescope here on this slide. But actually what we're doing is we're getting lots of different people all to commit to describe what they would do in the same future. And therefore, by all acting collectively, the demand signal is that much stronger and that much greater than it otherwise would be. So what does that mean in practice? So Natalie described before the doom loop that kind of is inhibiting innovation at the moment. So we have this problem where people are concerned about the supply and how available it is. They think it's going to be too expensive. But because of that lack of certainty, because they're not sure whether or not they can get the supply, therefore isn't very much demand. But because there isn't very much demand, innovators can't scale, they don't have the confidence, they can't go to their investors and get capital, and therefore the product remains at a pilot stage and we just go round and round and round in this doom loop. What the AMC does is it tries to break out of that doom loop by saying, okay, if this product was available, we would buy this amount of that product. It's not a commitment saying we will buy it. It's a commitment saying if it became available, we would buy it. But because they've made that conditional commitment, the conditional on actually being available at scale, innovators then know that the market exists. And this allows the doom loop to be unlocked or unraveled, because when innovators know that the market exists, it is that much easier for them to have the conversations with their investors or with their internal boards and say, look, there is this market here. We know that these people are willing to buy this product. We've got it written down on a piece of paper. They've publicly committed to it. And therefore, the capital should flow into these innovations that much more clearly than it otherwise would do. Because the capital flows in, the production can scale up. They can go from pilot stage to something which is approaching commercial stage. Moreover, because the scale of the market becomes clearer, some of the concerns around insurance availability and whether or not insurers are really willing to insure these products, the fact that there's this clear commitment can help dissolve away some of those challenges or provide an incentive at least to address some of those challenges. And then we have product available, we have confidence that the product is going to be insured, and therefore clients can turn their conditional commitments into actual operationalized commitments and buy as per the terms of their commitments. And then, of course, you're out of the kind of the vicious doom loop and into this much more virtuous circle instead. So let me just now go into a little bit more detail about how the AMC works in practice. And what I would say is that there will be a brief opportunity for a question and answer session at the end of this particular part of the presentation. So if there's anything which you'd like to explore in more depth about some of the technical details of the AMC, then there'll be an opportunity immediately after this session just to run through some of these issues. What the AMC consists of is really three core pillars, which is then underpinned by 2 institutions. So the first of the pillars, and in some ways, obviously, the most important, is the actual AMC itself. And this is it's a very simple one-page piece of paper which people sign up to, and asset owners in particular, and potentially contractors as well. On that piece of paper, they make those conditional demand commitments. They say, this is the amount of low carbon concrete that we would be willing to buy if the product became available. What they also do, and what specifiers do as well, is that they make a series of complementary commitments to make sure that actually those products, there's a kind of a fertile market available to support the use of those products. So they commit to things like engaging with their supply chain. They commit to things like introducing new clients or new contractors to the AMC, and generally try to create as I say, a kind of a fertile environment in which, through making these commitments, it's that much more likely that the low carbon concretes come to pass. But the essence of it, the critical thing, is these volume commitments made by asset owners, and potentially, if they wish to, by contractors. The second stage or second ingredient or pillar of the AMC initiative are the target product profiles. And these are actually the detail describing what is the innovation that people would be willing to buy. When they say we would buy 10,000 cubic meters of low carbon concrete, what does low carbon concrete mean, and what are the technical specifications around that, and what are the commercial specifications around that as well. And it's really important that one of the key features about the AMC is that these are signed up to by all organizations. So every organization makes a commitment towards TPP, as I'll come on to say in a second, there are various TPPs. And people can choose which TPPs they want to put their purchasing power behind. But importantly, once you've decided, you're adding your purchasing power to the purchasing power of others who are also making their commitments to the same TPPs. And it's through that collective demand that we kind of hope to be able to move the market that much more clearly and that much more vocally than we would do if it was each individual organisation acting independently. So the second pillar are the target product profiles, the technical and commercial specifications of what low carbon concrete is. And then the third part of the AMC architecture are the AMC rules. And these are intended to make sure that the commitments that people make under the AMC itself aren't just kind of written onto a nice piece of paper and then kind of conveniently forgotten about in the future. But actually, there's a clear, transparent process through which the commitments can be translated and inserted into construction contracts. So you could, the intended vehicle is that there would be part of a construction contract which say, as during the course of this construction contract, we will follow the AMC rules as annexed in Annex K or whatever it is. And then the AMC rules would describe the processes that people would commit to following in order to use the innovative low carbon concretes, which their purchasing power they've made for commitments towards. So those are the 3 core pillars. But then underneath that, we then also have a couple of kind of institutions, although hopefully very light. The first is just the scheme administrator, which their responsibility is effectively to collate these conditional demand commitments, publicise them, and make sure that everybody is aware of what is going on in relation to the AMC. But then complementing that, we have a separate institution, which is the independent expert group. And the role of the independent expert group is to help people who are making commitments under the AMC to understand whether innovations which are being brought forward do genuinely meet the target product profiles that have been specified. They can, so that they can be confident that when an innovator approaches them and says, oh, we've got a good product, we think it will help you meet your commitment, the AMC signatories can turn to the IEG and say, can you confirm that this product does indeed meet this commitment? As well as providing additional complementary technical support, for instance, to updating the TPPs, and to making sure that the TPPs are kind of continue to be fit for purpose. So those are the key elements of the AMC. And then I won't go into these slides in detail, but just to describe a little bit about what the target product profiles are. We have 3 different target product profiles. The first 2 TPPs are TPP1 and TPP2, relate to concretes which, when they come to market, we would be confident that they will be consistent with British standards. So BS 8500, EN 197, etc., etc. And for these products, for these in-code products, we're that much more confident that people can make conditional demand commitments of volume, significant conditional demand commitments towards them. And therefore, we wanted to split them out from some of the other innovations. And then delving down into the difference between TPP1 and TPP2, TPP1 is focused on concretes which are using alternative SCM, so SCMs other than GGBS and virgin fly ash, and therefore trying to reduce the carbon out of a concrete by reducing the amount of clinker that is being used. And then TPP2 is really about trying to take out the carbon in the clinker itself. So different innovations would fall under either of these different TPPs. And people make commitments to either of these TPPs depending on which type of innovation they are most interested in supporting. So we've got a lot of people who have signed up because they have a very strong interest in seeing calcined clay come to market and be used more heavily in the market in the UK. And that would fall under TPP1. And therefore, they've made their commitments against TPP1. Whereas others think, well, actually, we see the real opportunities in terms of reducing the carbon intensity of the clinker, and therefore we've made our conditional demand commitments towards TPP2. You can obviously, as a signatory, make commitments to more than one TPP, and in fact, we actively encourage that. But by splitting out these TPPs, it provides flexibility to signatories to say, well, this is where we think the innovation is most exciting, and this is where the types of innovation that we really want to sit behind. TPP3, in contrast to TPPs 1 and 2, relates to concretes which, when they come to market, are not expected to be consistent with the prescriptive part of the codes. And at the moment, we are still working through exactly how the TPP3 would work, but with the independent expert group, it's beginning to take shape with this idea that there'd be one part of TPP3 which would look at new products, and then one part of TPP3 which might look at opportunities to sequester carbon within a kind of more conventional mix. And so that's still being firmed up as we speak, but the idea is that people would be open to kind of define whether or not they were particularly interested in those product ones or in the sequestration technologies or in some combination. What I haven't gone into in detail here, but we can talk about in this question and answer by all means, is actually what's the detail of what's in each of these 3 TPPs. But at a high level, they all involve some sort of carbon intensity commitment. So the concrete or the clinker or whatever it is, depending on the TPP, would have to meet some sort of carbon threshold so that we could be confident that actually the products we're pulling through are going to be kind of the concretes and products that we want to see on the net zero journey. And there are requirements or opportunity, kind of a ceiling price, which is specified in the TPP. And that's, on the one hand, intended to give confidence to innovators that they can cover the initial cost premium that might be associated with these new low carbon concretes, but to signatories to give them confidence that that concrete price, it won't go above that threshold, and they can be confident when they're making their commitments that they're not signing up to an open-ended check. And so we've worked quite extensively with people over the last couple of years to try and identify what appropriate price premium might be in order to get that balance right, give innovators the incentive they need, whilst not leaving signatories in a challenging position. I'll come back to that price point in a few seconds in the next session, because there's some important kind of additional context to add to that. So this is the AMC in practice, and I think it's largely kind of, I hope this is just reiterating what I've said on the previous slides about how it works. So you make the commitment, both the volume commitments and the complementary commitments, they get aggregated together, people see the market signal, that market signal pulls through concretes, and once those solutions have been pulled through, signatories are then kind of make good on the commitments, but only if those contracts come through. So it's as I say, that conditionality aspect to it. So just in terms of where we're up to on the AMC, this is a live actual initiative. As of November last year, we launched, and I'm pleased to say that we have met our target in terms of the number of signatories that have signed up to the AMC. And you can see here who those companies are. So obviously Scottish Water, who've kindly arranged today's event, but also a range of other companies. And what we're really pleased with by this initial portfolio is, first of all, that they cover a range of different stakeholders in the sector. So both asset owners as well as contractors and specifiers, each who are making slightly different commitments depending on their position in the value chain. And also that we are covering a wide range of different kind of types of company in terms of whether they're focused on the infrastructure side or whether they're focused on the real estate side, as well as on the public and private sector side as well. So this is a growing community, and we're delighted with the members who have already signed up to the initiative. Just one other thing I wanted to talk about very quickly is how we've tried to make sure that the AMC goes beyond just a very kind of simple demand commitment, because that demand commitment is vital and valuable, but only goes so far. And so we've put other initiatives within the AMC in order to make sure that there's a kind of this fertile ecosystem which supports ultimately what will support the development of low carbon concretes through the signing of offtake agreements, which is where we understand kind of the world will need to go to if we want to see large-scale investment. So as we've got here, yes, we have the demand commitments themselves being made by clients, but that is complemented by this complementary commitments which are being made by contractors to use those products, and to specifiers to make sure that they will always make available a TPP aligned option within their specifications where it's appropriate. All of those different actors also commit to engaging with actors across the supply chain, including innovators and the large cement producers, coupled with the fact that we have our independent expert group. And we've had a lot of engagement with people on the independent expert group. And that has been kind of revealed to us the importance of that organisation in providing credibility to signatories, that actually they can be confident that the products that are coming through the AMC mechanism are going to be fit for purpose and are going to be usable and useful. We then have the rules, which I mentioned, which are intended to make sure there's a clear, transparent pathway for these big products to actually being used. And then we've had an extensive period of engagement and ongoing engagement with wider stakeholders across the sector. So we've been working a lot with other industry initiatives, But we've also been engaging extensively with the insurance community to understand what they need to see, and they have in particular shaped the route and the design of the and the role of the IEG, which is particularly important to them. And we have been engaging with and continue to engage with the finance community to make sure that everything that we're designing meets their needs, so that they are find it that much easier to actually put capital towards the innovators which are coming through. And then final part of the kind of the ecosystem that we're looking to create is through creating platforms for ongoing engagement. So Natalie, in a few minutes, will talk about an event we held a couple of weeks ago, which was very successful and brought together a large number of different innovators and signatories and the wider ecosystem, and effectively explained exactly how the AMC was working, got people to stand up on stage and say, these are our commitments that we are making. We want product that meets these commitments. And likewise, got innovators to stand up on stage and say, we've got a product which meets the TPPs. Why don't we have a conversation? And then we kind of created kind of speed dating opportunities for different people to come together and identify where there might be opportunities. So just coming back to some of the key barriers and why we see the AMC as being so important. So we found in our previous research, and I think largely backed up by the word cloud at the beginning of this session, we found kind of there were 4 main things which we really needed to address if the AMC was going to work. First of all, we needed to address this challenge that innovators and their investors don't have confidence that a product is going to be bought, but people are actually will make the commitments and will actually buy the product, especially if that product, when it initially comes to market, might come at a higher price. And that's kind of the essence of the essence of the AMC, is to overcome that problem by creating this collective demand signal, making it joined up across different organizations through the TPPs, and just providing that confidence. Secondly, there's a concern around whether or not the products actually work, whether they do what people think, what innovators are claiming that they will do, and whether or not they meet relevant performance thresholds and requirements. And there, the independent expert group is playing a key role. Thirdly, especially for products which are sitting outside of codes, there are ongoing concerns around insurance. I would be wrong and remiss of me to stand up now and say that we have addressed all of those and there's no longer any significant challenge in relation to insurability. But what I can say is, first of all, that we have engaged and we continue to engage extensively with the insurance community, and now have a very good understanding of the types of data they need to see, the way they would like to see the independent expert group work, and they have kind of significantly shaped the way that the AMC is working, as well as we have our split between our in-code concretes, TPPs 1 and 2, versus our out-of-code concretes, which is also kind of, and for those in-code concretes, those insurability problems are much less significant. And then we've had this issue around making sure that the whole supply chain actually is pulling in the same direction. And that the AMC looks to respond to that by not just asking any one type of organization to make these commitments, but actually to bring all of the ecosystem together, asset owners, contractors, specifiers, and all make commitments reflective of their position in the sector, of course, but all make commitments which can demonstrate there is this concerted kind of combined effort to bring these products to market. And then the last thing I wanted to say before a little pause is just to say we would have loved to have claimed that we were the people who came up with the whole concept of the AMC, of an AMC, and that not only is it innovative because it's happened in the concrete sector, but it's innovative because it's never happened before anywhere in the world. That is not true. And indeed, the good aspect from that is that we can see that in other contracts and other sectors, this initiative has already worked. So perhaps the most famous example is an AMC which was created for a particular vaccine for the pneumococcus disease. And what you can see on the right-hand side here is how much more effective a vaccine for pneumococcus was because it benefited from the AMC, compared to a vaccine for a similar virus which didn't have the AMC. And you can see that the kind of the penetration of the vaccine through the product into the market was much quicker because of the AMC. And we also see similar sorts of AMC commitments which are being made in relation to carbon dioxide removal technologies, as well as in relation to the deployment of low emission shipping fuels. So there's lots of examples of these kind of collective commitments coming together to really unlock investment. I will pause there for a second. And I think there's now an opportunity for kind of initial 5-minute question and answers, and then we'll come back to this issue of the business case and why signatories are signing up.
Absolutely. We need to be a little bit speedy here because we are slightly over time, but
Sorry.
I'll ask a couple of no, don't worry, but we'll ask a couple of questions that have come in. So I think you already mentioned about the cost premium, but somebody was asking how you manage the cost premium.
So we will talk a little bit more about this in a second as well, but just to say the cost premium is intended as a short-term expedient to bring these products to market. It is intended as a ceiling with the hope that if there's enough activity in the market, then that the ceiling won't be breached. And as I'll come on to talk about in the next session, what we see from across a wide range of different technologies is that once we've got over this kind of short-term cost hump, many of these technologies, low carbon technologies, actually offer significant cost savings into the medium term, and we can expect to come down the cost curve really quite quickly. And there's very good reason to believe that many of these technologies can actually offer in the medium term lower cost product than the conventional product at the moment.
Great, thanks, John. And then Colin wanted to ask, there's lots of conflicting opinions on future availability of GGBS. Is there any definitive information available about this?
I'm not sure. I hesitate to claim if I can assert whether anything is definitive. But I think we talked a little bit about this in the chat function. There is this iStruct.e report, which other people who I trust very well tell me is a definitive view. And certainly says quite clearly that there are limitations, and in particular you get this kind of waterbed effect. So any GGBS which is used here just means that there'll be higher emissions somewhere else, so really pointing to the need to find additional supplementary cementitious materials to relieve some of the pressure on GGBS.
Great, thanks, John. Following on from that, presumably the intent to move to electric arc furnace for steel production will reduce GGBS availability also?
Yes, that's right, and that's why our the AMC at the moment, at least for TPPs, are trying to bring forward technologies which aren't using GGBS, so that we as that dynamic in the steel industry happens, the cement and concrete sector isn't left kind of high and dry.
Great, thanks, John. Well, that was it for the technical questions so far, so that's great. Katira, I think you're up next.
Thanks, Leah. Okay, so we'll move on to sharing a bit of detail around how Scottish Water decided to join the AMC and our process for building the business case. So really it started from a strong foundation of leadership support for our net zero ambitions, and this enabled us to explore what joining would mean and to engage in any key stakeholders in the business and in our supply chain across commercial, legal, engineering and others to test their appetite for the approach. So back in 2025, we held some workshops with those stakeholders to explore our collective appetite to signing up to the AMC, as well as some key considerations and questions that would need to be addressed ahead of time. The way that we did this was by hosting some workshops, as I said, with around 10 stakeholders from procurement, commercial, our construction teams and supply chain and legal. We structured the workshops by explaining the premise of the AMC and why we in procurement saw it as a key enabler to reducing our carbon emissions, followed by a deep dive into questions around estimating our annual concrete use, definitions of the target product profiles, as well as procurement and legal-based questions that had to be considered before we signed up. So from a concrete usage perspective, on the face of it, this was really challenging and fundamental for us to signing up to the advanced market commitment, because the volume of concrete that we use on an annual basis would form the basis of how much concrete we would commit to in the AMC. So the main challenge we had was reliable data on the concrete that we used across our capital programme. And whilst it was possible to extract project level data on concrete pours and volumes used, there was no easy or systemised way that aggregated the total volume across our capital programme. Fortunately, we had recognised that this was a challenge around 6 months prior and had already started some work with our concrete providers to gather usage data as part of our monthly rebate schedule with the supply chain. The challenge with this was that only a handful of our suppliers were able to provide the information that we were looking for at that moment in time. In real terms, we had about 65% of our total spend mapped to concrete orders. That meant that we had to extrapolate that 65% to try and estimate our total volume usage, which equated to around 13,000 metres cubed of concrete. To try and build further confidence in our initial estimate from our concrete suppliers, we gathered data from our Tier 1 supply chain concrete orders and our internal estimating system. Data from these sources were then compared to the 13,000 metre cubed estimate that was obtained by extrapolating our use from the civil material providers. This gave a rather wide range, so with our internal estimating system calculating 70,000 metres cubed. In the workshops with our stakeholders, we discussed the approach taken to date and collectively agreed that it would be pragmatic to make our commitments based on the lower end of the estimate, so that 13,000 metres cubed number, and then look to revise this in time once we had stronger data assurance. At the workshops, we also discussed various other aspects of the advanced market commitment, such as what are the implications of not fulfilling our commitments, if we made any, how do we engage our supply chain partners on this topic to make it happen in reality, how did the advanced market commitment concretes work from an insurance and liability perspective, and how does signing this commitment play through to our construction contracts. So there were various views on these questions, and not all were fully resolved by the end of our workshops. However, it was clear that there was a strong desire for Scottish Water to be seen as leading in this space, and that it felt like the right approach to take. And to that end, we felt that as a project team, we didn't want those unknowns to prohibit us at this stage from signing up to the advanced market commitment, provided that some more clarity would be gathered from Innovate UK on some of the aspects where we're having some challenges around getting the answers to. As the AMC model matured and initial signatories were sought, we saw the opportunity to make a compelling case for Scottish Water's involvement. So our team had significant experience in developed business cases. We also followed a structured approach and engaged those required for approval. So our head of procurement and our head of net zero in Scottish Water. Our business case included the context for decarbonising concrete, what the advanced market commitment is and how it can accelerate progress in our net zero aims. Costs, both membership and the potential price premiums on low carbon concretes, wider business benefits, including faster access to innovation and reducing future risks such as carbon border taxes. Like many water companies, Scottish Water is facing increasing customer expectations and stretches to our finances, as well as our stretching net zero target that I mentioned at the start. And whilst the carbon savings associated with the advanced market commitment were clear, what required understanding was the cost implications. So for us, this boiled down to a view that two things will happen. One, the introduction of CBAM, so the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which is a tax on carbon materials like certain cements and steel. This means that carbon-intensive cement and clinker imports will get steadily more expensive, and high-carbon concrete will not stay cheap. And this is due to commence around January 2027. Second point that we were considering was the limited availability of GGBS, so ground granulated blast furnace slag. As steel decarbonises, blast furnace slag production is declining, so relying on it as the main low carbon substitute is not substantial and prices will increase. So ultimately, we saw that signing up to the AMC will allow us to pay for these next generation low carbon concretes in a controlled, strategic way now as opposed to reactively down the line. And secondly, we completed a piece of analysis that looked at the cost exposure we would have if we signed up to the advanced market commitment for a certain volume of concrete. Ultimately, our advanced market commitment is based on 15, 10 and 5% of TPP 1, 2 and 3, just shown on the slide here. Against our estimated annual concrete usage of around 13,000 metres cubed. Now, with the price premium limits that were included within the definitions of the target product profiles, for example, we would only be required to buy TPP1 if it costs us no more than 10% above the cost of CEM1. We determined that our cost exposure to paying the premium would be around £50,000, which seemed a small price to pay against a capital programme of £1 billion annually and with substantial carbon savings attached. So in developing the business case, a written document was prepared and we then held sessions with our senior leaders to discuss the advanced market commitment. So it was really helpful for us at the time because Innovate UK had also issued a letter from a government minister to our chief executive outlining the importance of the AMC, and this was really influential for us to help us get signed up. Our senior leaders who signed off on the advanced market commitment were very complimentary of the approach and the rationale given to signing off. And as such, most of the feedback we received was on the challenges we expected to have in terms of mobilising the business to deliver the requirements and our commitments. So ultimately, the combination of clear benefits, environmental, commercial and strategic, led to successful approval of the business case from our senior leaders. And we took a lot of pride in being able to be the first organisation to have officially signed up to the advanced market commitments.
If I could just jump in there just for a little bit, just to kind of reflect on my involvement in all of that. As Katira highlighted, I think one of the biggest things that we had to do as an organisation was start off from our base level. What were we currently using with regards to cement? And that was probably one of the hardest things we had to do because of the way our frameworks are devised, our contractors were buying direct or from our supply chain, and therefore we weren't really getting good visibility of what concrete was actually being placed in the ground. The work that Katira highlighted there, that's one of the first things we did. We now know exactly how much concrete, of what blends, of what mixes are being placed. We're even being told by our supply chain what the carbon footprint is of each metre cube of concrete as it goes in the ground. Now that gives us a great place to start from. We know exactly what we're using. We know exactly what we can then look to use going forward. And that really has enhanced the availability of us being able to apply things that are within the advanced market commitment. And as Katira highlighted there, it's with great pride that we've signed up to this. If I go to any meeting with my senior leaders, they all mention the advanced market commitment, because it's something which we see as such a major win for us in our strive for net zero. So it's a great shout of praise to Katira and her team and all the hard work that they've done to get us to this point. And now technically, commercially, and within design and construction, we're looking to implement that now going forward to actually help us achieve that target that we have.
Thanks, Martin. Okay, so we'll move on to some detail around the benefits for Scottish Water so far from joining the AMC, and then the AMC team will take you through benefits to the wider sector for joining as well. So in terms of our return on investment, we expect the next generation of low carbon concretes to become available to our supply chain from now onwards. So some of these products are demonstrating up to 80% carbon savings, which is extremely promising for us. We're currently assessing deployment opportunities across our capital programme, projected volumes and commercial arrangements with suppliers. We've already seen that the AMC can accelerate the work that we've been doing to progress our work in the carbon space for several years, and it's been seen as a vehicle to hold ourselves accountable to publicly quantified value. Some of the other key benefits include demonstrating leadership and environmental stewardship within the industry, helping to create a domino effect by encouraging others and other organisations to join the AMC, providing clarity on the commercial conditions in which Scottish Water will adopt low carbon concretes, and striking an effective balance between our environmental commitments and economic responsibilities to our customers. So if we focus on the forecast of different scenarios for using low carbon concretes and the graphic on the right here, so the purple line essentially shows that if we did nothing at all, we'll emit more carbon, but looking at various steps Scottish Water is taking, such as blending concretes and concretes identified by the AMC in particular, we'll see a reduction in carbon for us. So this will be reported back to our regulator going forward as well as the AMC. So we've decided that on an annual basis, we'll start reporting to the Water Industry Commission for Scotland on our low carbon concrete use as well, which is really quite a big step in our commitment towards our net zero aims.
Thank you, Katira. Let me just then jump in with a few further thoughts about benefits for the wider industry, although I suspect largely echoing exactly what Katira has just been saying to a significant extent. So I think the first thing I'd say is that we have worked extremely hard with a very wide range of stakeholders to get us to this point, and they have a selection of those organisations are up on the screen now. But what they have been so helpful for us in doing is to make sure that we do think about the challenges that they are facing, and that we do respond to what they need to see in relation to the AMC. So in framing the benefits and in thinking about the benefits, we have really significantly benefited from this wide range of experts who have supported the AMC journey. Many of those are even have either signed or we are continuing to work closely with them to see if they in the hope and expectation that they will sign in the short to medium term. What has also been of kind of overarching benefit to a number of our signatories in kind of justifying the commitment to the AMC has been the strong government support, as Katira mentioned, and we have received and continue to have access to letters of support from a relevant minister, who asking and kind of encouraging companies to sign up. You will see on the right-hand side of this slide, we were fortunate enough to get the AMC mentioned explicitly within the main budget last year as something that the government was delighted to be supporting and working on, and calling out some of the signatories who were the first signatories to join the AMC. And that strong government support continues to exist as we move forward into the next stages. So just very quickly then, some of the benefits that we have heard from our signatories as to why they have chosen to sign up. And then I'll hand over to another signatory who has infiltrated the room, who can also provide their perspective as well. So 5 main things as we see it. First of all, it's all about bringing new low carbon concretes to market quickly. And we know that we're off track from our carbon targets at the moment, and that they look like they could be difficult to achieve. The AMC, by bringing people together and making these collective commitments around common innovation specifications, is explicitly targeting faster delivery of new innovation. Secondly, because we bring that innovation to market quicker, we scale it quicker, we can get over that initial cost hurdle, that little cost hump, that much more quickly, and get the prices down and costs down into the medium term. And I'll come back to that again in a second. Thirdly, I've mentioned before the role of the independent expert group, and we've heard lots of feedback from various stakeholders within and out with the AMC about the important role that this organisation is playing in enhancing the credibility of the initiative and giving people confidence that the concretes that are being brought to market are actually aligned with the innovation needs and the carbon needs, as well as the performance needs for those concretes. Fourthly, we continue to work with the insurance sector and have a number of different pieces of work ongoing, be it risk management guidelines, be it exploring an opportunity to create a community of interest, all focused on trying to improve engagement with the insurance sector and reduce risks so that everybody can more confidently and insure a wider range of products in a wider range of use cases. And then finally, as I kind of Scottish Water are already demonstrating by hosting today's event, the opportunity that the AMC provides to those signatories to demonstrate their leadership, join a collaborative industry-wide initiative which is helping to reduce emissions and drive leadership towards net zero. Let me, at this stage, just very quickly also bring in Chris Bolton from J.M. Bentley. I'm sure many of you know J.M. Bentley and their extensive work in the water sector already, but Chris has kindly agreed to join us today and will just give a contractor's perspective on the value they see from the AMC.
Yeah, thanks, John. So I'm Chris Bolton, as John said, technical lead for J.M. Bentley, and yeah, really pleased to be one of the first signatories and one of two tier one contractors. So yeah, just going to give a little bit of perspective from that angle. Yeah, as John's alluded to there, we are quite extensive in the UK water industry, where you operate both as J.M. Bentley and as MMB, servicing 9 water and wastewater companies, including Scottish Water, and we often act as both contractor and specifier as well. And because of that coverage across the industry, we really recognise the important role we play in helping decarbonise the programmes, the capital programmes, as the investment's going to increase as we get into AMP8, and particularly that challenging part around decarbonising concrete. So to support that, we've signed up to the AMC. We've done that with a conditional commitment, similar to the one that Scottish Water described earlier. And yeah, I guess the main reason we've done this has been alluded to already a little bit, but I'll just kind of reiterate from a contractor's perspective. I think first and foremost for us, it gives us that clear signal to our supply chain, to those innovators, but importantly to our clients as well, like Scottish Water, that we're ready to act as that key integrator, that key role that we have as a contractor to bring these new products to site, and just kind of help unlock that doom loop that John described earlier. Already we've seen that the AMC has given us access to new low carbon products that we might not have seen otherwise. So that's kind of ranging from early stage innovators right through to the kind of large cement producers as well. It's given us that early access and getting those conversations happening. And then lastly, of those big 3 reasons, I guess it's those target product profiles that John described earlier and the independent expert group. We do believe that that's going to really accelerate the internal and the kind of asset owner adoption of these new technologies and give us a common language that we can all speak to as well. And it's ultimately help us overcome those technical and commercial hurdles that we often see. And if we come together to overcome them, it can improve. Yeah, I guess that's it really. Fundamentally, ultimately for me, it's about, yeah, if we're going to decarbonise concrete, we need to pull in the same direction, as John said. And the AMC has really helped us support that. You know, as contractors, you have that key role as the integrator between supply chain and asset owners. And that's why we were really keen to be involved. That's it. Thanks, John.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Let me go very quickly, because I'm conscious we're a little bit behind. I just wanted to very quickly double click on a couple of those benefits in a little bit more detail. People understandably, and I don't want to kind of downplay the significance of this, but people understandably kind of want to understand the cost increases that they would be signing up to, or maximum cost increases that they could be signing up to if they would become an AMC signatory. And it's important to be very clear that there are those cost increases incorporated into the target product profiles. They are around about 10 to 20%, depending on the particular target product profile that we're looking at. But what I would say is perhaps 3 main things in response. Firstly, when we look at these things, when we kind of did our analysis, and I'll come to this in a second, but when we did this analysis looking at the overall impact on construction costs, what we tend to see is very small impacts when we've aggregated up and taking into account kind of the cost of concrete versus the cost of other construction materials in the overall assets that are being built. And Katira mentioned that when she was talking about the perspective from Scottish Water. Secondly, the cost increases of 10 to 20% kind of vary, might be seen in the context of the natural variations which we're already seeing in concrete prices, which according to the ONS is kind of 5 to 8% each year anyway. It's kind of not too dissimilar from the fluctuations that we're already seeing. And then thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, is that critical to the AMC is that these cost increases are seen as a temporary measure, and that's kind of baked into the way in which the target product profiles are written. But with the intention being that if these products can be brought to market with a short-term cost increase in order to overcome some of those investment hurdles, then we can be reasonably confident that actually, because of the inherent nature of these products, that they're kind of lower energy intensity, that actually in the medium term, we should expect these products to be available at lower cost than the conventional CEM1 product. And that is what we see, and as the graph on the right hand shows, what we see for such a wide range of other low carbon technologies that we've been trying to bring to market over the last 10, 15, 20 years. And I mean, everybody knows this story so many times, but just looking at the solar story and terms of the reduction of over 85% in the cost of solar from as it has been deployed over the last years, kind of really demonstrates the scale of the cost reductions which are available for technologies once they scaled up and reach commercial deployment levels, and those initial barriers are overcome. So that's just a little bit on cost. What I would also just wanted to flag is some of the work we've done on looking at the scale of the emission reductions which could be available. We've done this for a wide range of different assets over the course of the last year or so. We've added in a sewer pipe as a water sector example here. And what we've done here is just a really simple calculation. Say, let's imagine you replace 50% of your current concrete use, assuming it's a kind of an average concrete product. Average carbon intensity of that concrete, you replaced it with a TPP AMC concrete. What sort of emission reductions would you expect to see? And you can see for the sewer pipe, our analysis suggests that could reduce emissions by up to 25 tons for every kilometre of concrete sewer pipe. That is associated with a kind of a reduction in lifetime embodied carbon of kind of 10 to 14%, not 8 to 14%, sorry. And you can see very modest increases in overall construction costs as well. We've obviously done that for a wide range of different assets, but the story is consistent across all of them. Really quite sizable kind of carbon savings and relatively modest increases in costs. On the subject of costs, one other thing that it's important to flag and be very open about is the costs associated with actually joining the AMC. What we have agreed with our members and signatories is that there would be a cost of £5,000 a year plus inflation over time, but that at the moment is capped at zero because of the additional government support that we're receiving. And we are continuing to work with both potential corporate sponsors and philanthropies in order to try and ensure that comes down as low as possible. And obviously everything gets passed through one-to-one in terms of cost savings if we do get that support from those organisations. Those costs are largely focused on remunerating the independent expert group, which we just identified, and to a small extent also covering the administration costs, but largely it covers the independent expert group. And I've already talked a little bit about concrete prices. So finally, just to reiterate the benefits, and I think the thing I would really point to here is that when we're thinking about the benefits are not in relative to a scenario in which we can continue to use high carbon concrete forever. The benefits are not because we know that world doesn't exist. The benefits are in relation to an environment in which we're trying to pull through low carbon concrete using alternative mechanisms, which are presumably more fragmented and don't have the kind of the organizing power that the AMC provides. So Relative to that counterfactual where organisations are trying to do it by themselves, we believe the AMC is going to bring through products more quickly and that the time to market will be accelerated. We believe that any cost increases that there are will be smaller and shorter lived. We believe that by bringing people together, we can share the common costs associated with testing and reduce the need for each individual organisation to go through the same analysis and to do things time and time again. We can leverage the role of the independent expert group. And we can make sure that there is greater attention to low carbon concretes being from the insurance sector than would happen if everybody was introducing or trying to approach the insurance sector by themselves. Let me pause there. Leah, I will hand back to you to decide how you want to organise things moving forward.
We were going to have a very quick break, but we are running a little bit over time, so we'll skip the break. But I am still going to pop this poll into the chat. Please do answer the poll that's about to be launched if you would like the AMC to get in touch with you, if you'd like to learn more about this project, or if you have any more questions and you would like to just be put in touch with the AMC team. So I'm just going to launch that now. Great. And while I leave that running, we can move on to the next section of the presentation, which is about the lessons learned. So Natalie and Katira, I think this is your piece to cover off quickly.
Great, thank you, Leah. I think it's me first. Just go to the first slide. Yes, so now we'll just take a quick look at what impact there's been to date. And this is in the context of those main Innovate UK objectives of unlocking investment in innovations and also recognising that some of those investments, given the scale of them, are going to take quite a long time. We already seen from John that we secured our first 10 signatories and we have quite a number working through the process of signing up. But this is just some of the other things that have been happening and just to sort of illustrate the impact a little bit. As we said, fundamental to the advanced market commitment is to be able to actually try and shift investment decisions and unlocking that doom loop with this market signal. One of the things we did was we held 2 events for the AMC during March. One was for later stage innovators and one was for early stage innovators in innovative low carbon concretes, with the ultimate aim to demonstrate to investors that these AMC commitments will eventually lead to procurement contracts, assuming the innovations are available, meet the TPPs and so on. And we ran this, so what you can see here is the Procure event, which was for later stage innovations. We ran that first. They were called Pitch and Procure. We ran the Procure one first so that we could see for the earlier stage innovators that were going to come in the next event to see what was happening at the later stage, so that those early stage investors could see that as well as a future market for the innovations, there's also a future investment pathway for their investments. So this first Procure event that you can see that was held on the 5th of March focused on innovations ready for scale-up investment, and they would be the early ones likely to be procured over the next couple of years by the AMC signatories. We had 14 later stage innovators there, all ready to discuss technical details of their concretes, the applications which they're most suitable for, with the customers and the infrastructure investors that were there. And you can just see the appetite in these photos. We were hugely oversubscribed for the event, and customers and investors, including infrastructure investors, all came along. There were more than 50 one-to-one meetings held. Those were pre-arranged meetings with a focus very much on facilitating the procurement and finance of scale-up of those products. And what was really great to see was that in the presentations, so some of the innovators actually presented, we were seeing that they were positioning themselves against the AMC, mentioning their alignment to the TPPs to sort of send that signal to investors that they believed that the TPPs and the AMC were important to them. And the turnout and the engagement at that event just showed us the appetite there is for the AMC and for trying to make it work right across the sector. So one of the things that I don't think we've touched on yet is that in an early part of the AMC programme, there was some Innovate UK SBRI funding for innovations. And these were projects where they had funding to deliver collaborative demonstrators working with contractors and working with end customers. And these innovations also represented at the Procure event. And they demonstrate examples of the sorts of innovations that we're looking to accelerate with the AMC. We've got a couple of videos here. I'm not going to play both of them because we're quite short of time, but I think when these slides get circulated, you can watch both of them. But I'll play one of them, which is the EcoSem video, which just gives you an idea of how close to scale up some of these innovations are. Great. And you can see, you can watch the other video. Oh, I don't want to stop this. Try and get this out. Okay. There we go. So here briefly, you can see the positive feedback that we've had across the ecosystem from innovators, producers, investors, and so on, because we did need to test when we were designing and launching that everyone understood and thought that the signal would actually result in a response for innovators and a response from investors. You'll see on the left-hand side that from innovators' perspective, the signal did give them confidence. It said it would increase their confidence in the market and increase their ability to raise investments. The same went for investors, who said that specifically the volume commitment, those specific maximum price uplifts, and also the rules which lay out the path to offtake would make a difference to them. And one larger supplier, one cement producer, told us that this could actually shift their internal capital investment decisions. So where they're competing internationally within their organisation for investment dollars, this could start to shift things to the UK. We also heard positive reactions from the insurance sector. And from them, they need to not only have the sort of data to provide them the confidence in the new concretes, but also they need to see a market for the insurance. So once they see that buyers and specifiers are committing to using these new future concretes, the insurance market will respond as they start to see a market for their new insurances. So finally, from CLT, what have we learned through this process? So we've learned a lot, but these are some of the things that we think are the most important. On the left-hand side, on the first column, are the things that make the mechanism effective. Firstly, although everyone, contractors, specifiers, asset owners, all say they need others in the value chain to commit, and the AMC integrates all of these, as we've seen earlier, it's the case that in reality, asset owners do hold the key to changing industry practices, because ultimately they are the end client and they pay for the concrete. They do need to work together with their specifiers and the supply chain to find ways to deploy these innovative products. The reality is, although they can make changes to their requirements, everyone does need to work together collaboratively. So that collaboration is absolutely key to this. Data sharing to build confidence in performance is really important across the board. And we heard so much about this throughout the project. For the specifiers to understand the new concretes, for the insurers to understand the risks, and for the signatories to share their experiences of use of the new concretes. Insurance of those low carbon concretes and understanding the risk profiles has to be addressed as part of any solution using new materials in construction, and this comes up time and time again. Investors need to be actively engaged through the process, going back to those objectives of unlocking engagement, so that we understand at each stage what they need to see to get the money flowing. And finally, engaging with those incumbent concrete suppliers is critical, as they hold the key often to that supply chain in a lot of regions, and they have the ability to help to scale that production of some of these new concretes. And for those that are thinking of signing up, on the right-hand side, as you've seen from the event summary and the videos, there are lots of innovations that are ready to scale up, and we really have seen a lot of these through the process. And if they're supported by industry commitment, they could break out of that sort of pilot demonstrator loop. We also learned something about how much concrete is being bought. So for many asset owners, that has been a little bit of a challenge. Often they don't know exactly how much concrete they pour, which means that if you're an asset owner, you might need to do a little bit of work to understand how much concrete you buy so that you can work out what sort of commitments you might be able to make. Getting internal buy-in to join the AMC does require cross-business engagement, and we heard a little bit about that from Scottish Water. And finally, we learned a lesson about external communication, creating internal awareness. So the more that we raise the external profile of the AMC and had those ministerial letters of support and so on, the more the internal interest and the internal buy-in. I'm going to hand back to Katira, I think, briefly next, who's going to talk a little bit about the lessons that Scottish Water learned through the process from their perspective.
Thanks, Natalie. So there's quite a few lessons learned that we could share, but I'll call out a few in particular, just given the time. So the first one being around concrete volume. So we knew from the initial estimating exercise that we did that we'd have to keep going with our supply chain on making reporting on concrete uses mandatory and an expectation. So we put in a lot of work to collaborate with our partners to accommodate their needs, as well as ours on the data collection template, as well as improving our analysis on the data we were receiving. We've now developed a Power BI report that can be cut and splice the data as we see fit, which is already driving new conversations amongst our supply chain. Secondly, a key learning has been on communication. So making the public commitment for the AMC is only half the job as we see it. It's now really important that we communicate our commitments and expectations with our delivery teams and supply chain to work with them to remove any blockers so that this can be enabled. Already we're in active conversations with our delivery teams around this. Another reflection is around involving our senior leaders at an early stage. So really important to test their appetite for this type of innovation. As I mentioned earlier, we are fortunate at Scottish Water to have a strong culture of net zero and sustainability. However, we recognise early on that the advanced market commitment in particular was a bold step with a different approach, and we needed senior leaders to be comfortable with their teams taking this approach as well. And lastly, a key learning for us has been the sheer power of effective collaboration. So we think that the process that Innovate UK have undertaken this development of the advanced market commitment, that being one of co-creation, has really made this experience so much more robust than any one team delivering this in isolation. And within Scottish Water, the multidisciplinary workshop that I mentioned earlier, along with learning from speaking to other companies looking to sign up, has really increased our confidence significantly. And we think that these lessons will hold us in good stead as we focus now on mobilising around the delivery of our commitments for the AMC. And Scottish Water does view our participation in the AMC as a vital step in decarbonising concrete across the industry, and will continue to encourage client organisations, designers, specifiers and contractors to join and play their part in driving the change. Think back to yourself, Natalie.
Yes, so I think we're just about to move on to some questions, but just to wrap up, we'd love as many people as possible to get involved in the AMC to help collaborate and help to drive that innovation direction as fast as possible. What next? Engage with the AMC team and the AMC membership group to learn more about participating. So I think that if you respond to the poll, hopefully we can follow up with you. We'll set up a meeting with you to chat about what you're trying to achieve and talk in a little bit more detail about the processes of getting involved with the AMC. And then we'll share much more detailed information with you around what the commitments look like, what the rules look like, so that you can take those into your organisations, think about what it means for you, and think about joining up. But thank you very much to everyone for listening to us for the past hour and a half. And I think we're now going to go on to questions.
Great, thanks Natalie, and thanks to the rest of the presenting team as well for a really, really great and informative presentation. I hope the audience has found it super valuable and interesting. I am just going to stop sharing these slides so we can see our lovely presenters a little bit better for a few questions. Have we got all of our presenters on? John, there you are. Great, so we'll jump straight in. A couple of questions from Kaz, who wanted to ask, how has the AMC allowed Scottish Water to gain traction in the procurement of low carbon concretes that currently are not within British standards, for example, geopolymers?
I think to be perfectly honest, Kaz, it's early days. Yeah, we've only signed up in the last few months, but I can definitely see the advantage to where we were a couple of years ago, where we were struggling to get these other products onboarded. But with the support of the AMC, we've got a very clear direction in which to travel, as well as a focus from our own management teams, as Katira highlighted. So I think I'm really confident now that the products that we currently are looking at, we will be able to use the technical readiness level as a report that the AMC have done on a number of products, and we're able to then focus in on those and actually be able to deliver them into our contracts going forward, with some of them already very close to being enacted on our sites. So no, early days, but I've got a lot of confidence that it's something that's going to increase quite a lot, particularly over the next 6 to 12 months.
Great, thank you, Martin. Another question from Kaz is, one of the barriers we are finding with certain low carbon concretes is availability of testing data to BRE. To provide confidence to insurers, the mix will meet durability requirements, for example, for tanks in contact with wastewater or aggressive ground conditions. Has the AMC looked at this when working with suppliers and other clients?
So I'll probably come in and answer that. So I'm probably going to give a slightly more general answer, but one of the things that we've started to do is to do some much more detailed data collection with the innovators. So we have a form for them to fill in. We've had really high response to that form, so good appetite from the innovators to respond. About somewhere between 25 and 30 near to market innovators who've provided a lot of technical performance information, test information, and so on, that we can pass on to. At this point, the idea is to pass on to the independent expert group to look at whether they align with the TPPs, but also will be made available to the signatories to review. And then if they need additional information, they can then engage with the innovators. The question as to whether that's, how that's passed on to insurers and to testing and standards bodies, I think is probably not necessarily one, or certainly not for the testing bodies directly for the AMC, but certainly what we're finding is that there's quite a lot of data available to the signatories in terms of the performance of the concretes.
And perhaps I can just, okay, to just jump in very quickly on the insurance angle. So, and again, I suspect I can't give the answer to on the specific example as well as the questioner might like. But what I can say is that we have engaged with insurers to understand exactly kind of what data they would like to see and how they would like to have it presented, in order to increase their likelihood of providing insurance. So we ran a survey at the end of last year, to which we had more than 50 respondents from across the insurance community. That was supported by the insurance broker Willis Towers Watson, and that focused on understanding what information insurers would like to see, and it gave some really helpful insights in insurers emphasizing that, yes, of course, data is important, but they value the support of understanding how to interpret the data to make sure that they can kind of, in effect, shortcut the decision-making process by having having the interpretation around that data being shared more broadly. And that was something which led us then to talk to them about the role of the independent expert group as providing that kind of data interpretation function, and especially for outer coat concrete. So that's something which seems to be quite well received.
Great, thanks, John. And next question is from Tiago, who wanted to know how ready is the low carbon concrete market to support the UK's 2050 net zero target?
I can start, but then I'll definitely invite others in. I mean, I think it kind of depends if you're feeling glass half full or glass half empty. The glass half empty view would be that we're clearly quite a long way from our carbon targets and from the decarbonisation pathways that have been set out. And the kind of the business as usual trajectory would only see that a greater gap or divergence between where we are and where we would need to be. On the other hand, I think what we have taken as a kind of an optimistic view, a glass half full perspective from doing this work over the last couple of years, is just how, well, on both the demand and the supply side, just how many people there are interested in trying to bring about change. And we've benefited enormously from so many people supporting the AMC and wishing it well, and indeed signing up. But also, as Natalie and others already mentioned, the sheer abundance of innovators looking to break into this space, which is not an easy space to break into for all sorts of reasons, but nonetheless, there is a really kind of healthy ecosystem of innovators out there.
Perhaps I could just add to that. I think looking to where we were maybe 5 to 8 years ago when we tried to start looking at lower carbon concretes and what was out there, it's a lot better now. It's far much more better. There's so much more communication and coordination between the concrete suppliers and also innovators. Whereas before we were just talking to a concrete supplier and they really weren't interested. All they were interested in was giving you concrete. Whereas I think they themselves now have seen the benefit and the need from them to be more innovative with regards to low carbon options. So when we speak to different innovators, one of the questions we ask is, have you already partnered or have you already aligned with one of the big concrete suppliers? And quite regularly we'll hear back saying, oh yeah, we've already worked with a Breedens or a Tarmac or somebody else. So I feel that is really, really encouraging. Whereas, as I say, 10 years ago, we didn't see that, whereas now we're seeing innovators being able to partner with larger companies and actually bring these things to market. And that's why I've got certainly a very good view of it going forward. It very much is the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart scenario. You need that demand to drive the innovation, and you also need the innovation to drive the demand. But we're getting there, and it's certainly a lot better than where we were a number of years ago.
Great, thanks, Martin. We just have a couple questions left, so I'll try and whiz through them really quickly. Simon has asked, what specification and or standard are you working with your low carbon concrete projects? Martin, I don't know if that's a good one for you.
I'm quite happy. So ultimately, we're looking for BSA 500 compliance initially, and that is certainly something which, as you saw on the TPPs, there was categories, but there is also areas to expand beyond that. You heard in the video, Siska there talking about Flex 350, which is a kind of pre-British standard, which gives us compliance and also confidence in a product. So at the moment, we are certainly asking, if they can't have BS 500, we're certainly asking for them to have Flex 350. It is a process in which they have to apply for and submit for. So it shows commitment as well, and also gaining that. That may change going forward with the more innovators that we speak to. But at the moment, that's certainly our starting point in how we look at that. But that's also being aligned with the TPPs, which John highlighted earlier on.
Great, thank you. And then Jason just wanted to ask, what processes have you learnt from or included as part of your infrastructure design codes and standards and procurement to advance the use of low carbon concrete?
I think initially we took the stance that we wanted to use less concrete. The lowest carbon concrete we can use is if we don't use it. So we are looking at all alternatives to using concrete. That's a given. Also looking at precast elements where we can have a much better control over what is being delivered to site. But where we are using concrete, yes, we are looking to not only specify that in our own specifications and our standards, but also to encourage innovation in that space as well, very much from the point of view that we need to see these things reduced. So if we can design it out, we'll design it out. If we can minimise it, reduce the cover levels, reduce the thicknesses, whatever these things are, not just go with the standard. And what we were finding is that, for example, standard kiosks, and people were just pouring a kiosk slab 350 mil thick, because that's what they've always done. So when we challenged our designers to say, well, what actually is your slab needed to be designed to, we were able to reduce it by 100 mil in thickness. So that's fantastic. Right away, we're reducing the amount of cement and concrete that we're needing to use. So right away, using that along with a better understanding of the codes and the innovations that are out there, we're looking to do a lot more in that space.
Great. Thank you, Martin. That does bring us to the end of the session. We are out of time. There are a few more questions that people sent in ahead of the showcase, but not to worry, we will have those answered offline and we'll attach the answers to the case study where we haven't been able to answer them in person. I just wanted to say a massive thank you again to all of the audience for taking the time out of your day to join us today. We hope you have found it super valuable. And thank you again to the presenters for the hard work that has gone into today's presentation. Before you do drop off, we are just popping a link to our general feedback poll for these sessions into the chat. As I say, these really help shape the way that the showcases go moving forwards. So please do let us know what you found valuable or not so valuable, so we can make sure that we are catering to our audience the best we can. With that, I'll let everybody get going. I hope everybody has a lovely rest of your day, and thanks again. Bye.